In this video, we're going to chat about the first 12 hours after your baby is born. Nothing more, just the first 12 hours. And the first thing I want you to be mindful of, and if you're still pregnant, then you're not going to know the answer to this. So this is bringing your mind to it so that you can be mindful of it. If you've already had your baby, you've got the facts, and it's definitely going to help you to understand your baby's behavior. And that is the way that your baby is born, and honoring and taking into account the way that your baby is born and how that might impact and influence your baby's first feed. Because yes, the first feed is important, and it's lovely when they come out wide awake and alert and they go straight to the breast and they suckle and they suckle and they have a really long, good feed. But when that doesn't happen, it doesn't mean that it won't happen, and it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong. Rather, it's probably something to do with the fact that either you had a particularly long and challenging and difficult labor, so you're feeling exhausted, and so is your baby. They're not necessarily traumatized. It just means that the labor was long and they had to work a little bit harder to come out, and they're going to take a little bit longer to recover. If you've had any opioids or medical pain medication, opioids or an epidural, both of those would have passed to your baby, and your baby needs to metabolize them. The way that they respond mostly is that they will be quite sleepy, not as wide awake and alert as what we would like. And once again, it's about giving them the time and the space to metabolize those medications. And when they wake and when they're ready, they will respond and have that first feed. If you've had an elective cesarean section, they didn't even know that they were going to be born. If you've had an emergency cesarean, depending on what the reason for that emergency was and how you're feeling, bear in mind that if it was an emergency for fetal distress, then they've been a little bit distressed and they might need some time to recover from that. And they recover incredibly well. They may even be in the NICU, in which case you're going to have to make some adjustments. But either way, being mindful of the way that your baby was born and how that might influence the first feed. And this is specifically for those whose babies don't come out wide awake, alert, moving straight to the breast and breastfeeding as we see in the movies and doing that breast crawl. And the take-home message is to be patient and to trust that that first feed will happen. It may just take a little bit longer. So that leads me into what exactly is the first feed? What does the baby get? And the baby gets colostrum. We refer to it as a beautiful golden liquid full of goodness, which is exactly what it is. Immunoglobulins, antibodies, and it's very high in energy, very small amounts, but easily digestible, and baby literally thrives on small, frequent feeds. The amount they get is variable, but generally it's only going to be around about 1 teaspoon, and that is enough because of its very high energy content and the way that it's designed. Plus, very important to remember that actually the majority of babies' energy requirements are met by them breaking down their own brown fat, subcutaneous brown fat that they pack on in the last weeks of pregnancy. And specifically for this reason, for the first 3 days before the colostrum transitions to become breast milk, that is what happens for babies. The colostrum has many more properties than just nutritional. As I mentioned already, it's got the immunoglobulins and antibodies. It's also a laxative, encouraging the baby to pass the very first stool, that thick, black, sticky stool called meconium. The breast milk or the colostrum encourages that stool to come out, and that will happen in the first 24 hours. And then another very important function of the colostrum is to line and protect the baby's gut. Throughout your pregnancy, the only thing that passed through your baby's gut was your amniotic fluid. Yes, they do drink your amniotic fluid. They pee it out and they drink it again. So it's a virgin, clean, beautiful gut. And you want to make sure, as far as you possibly can, that the very first thing that passes through your baby's gut is colostrum, because they are very tiny, microscopic interstitial spaces, and the colostrum will line those spaces and move into them and protect your baby's gut, and sets the tone for your baby's health going forward. It's also about the microbiome, but that is a subject all on its own, and I'm not going to go into it in this video series. But just to know the importance of the first feed being your colostrum to line your baby's gut. If for some reason you are unable to breastfeed or have your baby skin to skin, to make sure that your birth team and all the people who are around you in those first hours have a very clear understanding of the importance of your baby getting colostrum as their first feed, and for nothing else to be given to your baby beyond that, even if it is only very, very small quantities, 2 mils, 3 mils, 4 mils, or 5 mils, because even when you express, you won't get that much and you're not expected to. So making sure that your support team is there for your baby to get those small amounts, ideally directly from the breast, but if for situations beyond your control, your baby is unable to be with you and breastfeeding, then for you to be able to express that and give it to the baby. We're then going to move on to skin to skin. Skin to skin, it's kind of like talked about so much, but here's why it's important. And specifically, if your baby isn't feeding immediately after birth and you are honoring that birth experience, the way that you want to honor it is by keeping your baby right here. By having your baby right here on your chest, your baby's able to smell you, hear your voice as you're talking, feel the vibration of your chest while you're talking to them. They are able to feel the movement of your chest when you're breathing in and out, hear your heartbeat, and smell you and your milk. And it means that your baby they're maintaining their body temperature from you. You are helping your baby to maintain their body temperature. So that means that their energy output is going to be much less because there's less energy being put into them having to get the right temperature. They're just going to be your temperature, which is correct because we know how to maintain our body temperature. So the energy requirements are less with that for skin to skin. Plus, all you need to do, and your head will probably be down like this, you can smell your baby's head. So ideally for your baby not to have a hat on. Remember, they are warm enough because they're with you, and you can smell your baby's head, and all of those is going to encourage the release and influence the amount of oxytocin that is released. Now, oxytocin and prolactin are the two hormones of breastfeeding that are very important and that are already there in your body. We don't just have to manufacture them, they are there. And the process of labor and birth and all of that means that there are varying levels. And if you've had a vaginal birth, then oxytocin levels are already very high. If you've had a cesarean, elective, or emergency, then the skin to skin is going to help to influence the release of that oxytocin, which is so important for the bonding and so important for the establishment of breastfeeding and for your body to know baby's here, so the colostrum can start flowing. You won't know how much your baby is getting, but this is where that trusting of the process comes in, because you know that it's only small amounts, so as long as they are suckling. By keeping your baby skin to skin, as soon as they are ready to feed, they will naturally start bobbing and pecking their little heads and moving down. Their little feet will also be pushing into your belly, which is all part of, once again, encouraging the uterus to contract and causing more surges of oxytocin. And then all you need to do is be guiding your baby down and watching how they move and root and look for the nipple. So let's look at the first latch. Now, I'm going to move this down so that you're able to see. And let's start off by looking at what usually happens. The baby with skin to skin started moving down, so naturally kind of moves there, and you naturally go to hold your baby like this because this is how we see it in the movies, and this feels really, really comfortable. The only problem with this is that when I'm holding my baby comfortably like this with the head in the crook of my elbow, the little mouth is too far away from my nipple. And what I'd really like is for the nose to be in line with the nipple so that when baby reaches up to drink, they have to extend their neck and reach up for it. And the reason for that is because when I drink, it would be very difficult for me to drink like that if I can't reach up. I naturally reach up to drink, and you want your baby to be able to do the same thing. So I want to move my baby further around so that the nose is in line with the nipple. And if they're already rooting, and they remember rooting is guided by the cheek, then they will naturally be opening their mouth. Now, once again, what you always see is baby being held like this, but this means that I don't have any control, and I'll end up leaning forward and trying to guide the baby's breast in like that, the breast into the baby's mouth like this, which is quite uncomfortable for both you and the baby. And if you keep doing this, you're probably going to end up with a crick in your neck and backache. What will be much easier, but maybe a little bit uncomfortable initially, is to just have your baby laying across, tummy to mummy, bringing this arm over and tucking my baby in, taking my hand, if I have like a gun shape, the thumb on one ear, there the other. The majority of the support is at the top of the baby's shoulders, behind their neck. And now this hand is free to make a wide C, and all that does is shapes my breast. But what it means with this is that I've got a lot of control of baby's head, because they're already going like this. So I can just guide them towards the nipple. And I don't, if my hands are too close to the nipple, my fingers are getting in the way. So really move it back. And what I'm going to do is wait for the gape and then just tip my baby's head forward. I want to place the nipple on the tongue. When I tip forward, what happens is more of the nipple will go in. Now, ideally, this is that you're going to have hands-on support. And by hands-on, I mean somebody who will be able to stand with you and guide you through all of these things, and then look and see what that looks like, if it's a good latch, and let you know. But what I want for you to do is to see how that latch feels. So once baby's on and you see a rhythmic sucking pattern, then of course you can and settle back into a good comfortable position for you. Now, another position that I'm going to show you, just because I'm here, is the football position. And it's exactly the same thing. All I'm doing is I'm shifting the baby around to this side. I've still got tummy to mummy, and I'm still tucked in nicely over here. And I might have a cushion, but I can have this hand on the breast now, wide C, wait for the gape, bring the baby on. It's this little movement. So put the chin to the breast, wait for the gape, nipple in the mouth, tip it on. Now, when I have a doll and not a crying, moving, squirming, squiggly baby, and I'm not overcome with hormones and love and all of the other stuff, it's incredibly easy. It looks easy. If you haven't had your baby yet, you're probably thinking, piece of cake. And it is, kind of, but not quite. So if you've already had your baby and you're struggling, then you know that maybe it's not that easy. And what's that, once again, that's why it's really important to get that hands-on support and guidance. But here are the things I want you to look for. One, it should not be painful. A good latch feels deep, and you will see the breast tissue moving as your baby is sucking. We always say that we would like the majority of the areola to be in, but of course, this depends on the size of your areola, okay? So just making sure that the part of your nipple that sticks out is in the baby's mouth, and a good little bit around there, because that's where the milk ducts are, and that's where your baby wants to be sucking and stimulating those milk ducts. It should feel strong but comfortable, and you will probably see and hear your baby suckling, and you will see the little jaw and ears moving. It should be a deep, rhythmic sucking motion. Now, initially, it's going to take you a while because you don't actually know what to look for. I would just want you to be mindful and come in from a place of really trusting that you do know how to breastfeed. Just remember, you've grown a baby, you've birthed a baby, and you are able to breastfeed your baby. Everything that you need to breastfeed your baby, you already have, but do you trust it? And think about that. If you're still pregnant now, I want you to think about how much you really trust that. If you already had your baby, how trusting, how confident are you? Because really, the key ingredients for breastfeeding is trust and confidence. These are all technical things, but if you don't trust the process, if you don't trust what is happening, it's going to be incredibly difficult. But one thing I want to remind you of, that we're talking about the first 12 hours. So these are the first feeds of thousands of feeds that you're going to be doing. So you are learning, and so is your baby. It's a learning experience, and it is some trial and error. And error is okay if you've got somebody with you who can just gently guide you, say, no, let's relatch. That doesn't look right, and you can feel that it's not quite right. So to break the latch, you're going to put your finger into baby's mouth to break the suction before releasing baby from the breast so that you can relatch, and just being patient, okay? Like deep breathing is so talked about, but so important. And the more tense and anxious you become, the more tense and anxious your baby will become. There's no doubt about it. Your baby feels your tension and anxiety. So reminding yourself that this is the first feed of many, 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 and both of you are learning. So just taking it one feed at a time.